Today we're going to be looking at the muscles of the forearm. But before we start anything, I think we should take a look at a guide that we made for you. So this is a little trick that you basically need to know when you're looking at the muscles of the forearm. So carpi just means wrist, indices means index, pollices you're looking at the thumb, digitorum you're looking at digits 2 to 5, and digiti minima you're looking at just the 5th digit. All right. So back to the arm. So the first muscle on the lab manual for the anterior forearm is the Pronator Teres. So we're going to be looking, this is your right arm, right? So we're looking at the thumb here, that's your right arm. We're going to be looking from medial to lateral for the anterior forearm, the superficial group. So the first muscle you see here is your Pronator Teres. The one beside it would be your Flexor carpi radialis, your palmaris longus, and then your Flexor carpi ulnaris. All right, so those are the 4 flexors that you need to know. The second layer, which is underneath, this one would be called the Flexor Digitorum superficialis. Okay, and removing that, we'll be looking into the deeper muscles of your anterior forearm. So some students might get mixed up here, and this is with the Flexor Digitorum Profundus. Now, this might look like it's 2 muscle because it's separated by the nerve, but how you're supposed to picture this is pretend that I could lift this nerve up and there would be a muscle underneath, and that muscle underneath would be the Flexor Digitorum Profundus. Right next to it would be the Flexor pollicis longus because this goes to your thumb, all right? So remember we saw earlier pollicis means thumb, so that Flexor pollicis longus, all right? The last muscle for the anterior forearm was the Pronator Quadratus. You can't really see it here. It might show up on the cadavers, but you never know. Now we're looking at the posterior forearm. Missing piece for the posterior forearm would be here. So the first one we're going to be looking at is the Brachioradialis, also known as the drinking muscle, followed by the Extensor carpi radialis longus and the Extensor carpi radialis brevis. Now the way to distinguish or help distinguish between these two is remember that the longus, the Extensor carpi radialis longus, is just longer. It just reaches high. It takes longer time for it to reach the wrist, which is the carpi, and the brevis is a bit shorter. You could see between the 2 muscles here. All right. The muscle right next to it would be the Extensor Digitorum, the Extensor Digiti minimi, and the Extensor carpi ulnaris. Okay. Students tend to mix up between the Extensor Digiti minimi and the Extensor carpi ulnaris. And the reason is, I mean, they both look like they're going to the 5th digit. But a trick to remember this is if you recall, this is your Flexor carpi ulnaris. So remember the 2 ulnaris, Flexor carpi ulnaris and Extensor carpi ulnaris, are right next to each other. All right. Now we're looking at the posterior forearm, the deeper muscle. So if I remove this set of 3 muscles right here, underneath would be your supinator. Okay, the supinator is followed by these 3, the next 3 muscles you'll be looking at. This would be the abductor pollicis longus, the extensor pollicis brevis, and the extensor, this is more like the tendon, but the extensor pollicis longus. And the trick that I use is that there would be a brevis between 2 longus right here. So brevis between 2 longus, okay? And then the last muscle we're looking at is, so remember this is your extensor digitorum. Look at, I would like for you to zoom in, look closely right here. You have 2 tendons and there's one in between. This one in between, that's your extensor indices. And that's it, guys, for the muscles of the forearm.